Hello, I'm John Tremblay, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about AI and how it is impacting the customer experience, particularly in consumer financial services, including banking, credit unions, and insurance companies. There are two overarching themes. One is how to deliver a consistent user experience over any devices, and two is how to think about the entire journey. What is the entry point? What is it that they're trying to do, such as shopping for a new credit card? If you look at some of the recent research, the Digital Banking Report asked financial institutions about their top strategic priorities through 2021. And improving customer experience came in second only to digital transformation. And those two really go hand in hand together, and it's quite understandable why they would be at the top of the priority. The shift to digital has been quite profound in this past year and continues to reshape the landscape. In order to do that, you really have to also look at the customer experience and how that customer experience is going to be impacted across the various channels and various devices that your audience will want to use. If you look at some of those trends, a couple other things were really interesting. What is important and what in the last 12 months has changed that is shaping the agenda for 2021. The first was speed and simplicity rule. Customers really no longer base their experience and perception solely on price, product, and convenience. Instead, expectations are really now more centered around speed, around simplicity, and around being contextual to what they're doing. This also leads to the second point, which is channel uniformity, which is assumed. So more than ever, consumers are really expecting the same level of service and the same experience, regardless of the channel or platform that they're using, and they're increasingly expecting this to happen in real time. The third is design, and design matters. Customers are making decisions now based on whether they like a website or they like a mobile application, and they do so in milliseconds. So if they don't like your design, if they don't like the experience, they're gone. They're really not sticky anymore, which is quite a big challenge for a lot of businesses and especially financial services companies. So according to the Digital Banking Report we already talked about, they really dug into this, and a bad online and mobile experience can really damage your brand and your reputation and the potential for future engagement with this visitor. Specifically, 57% of customers won't recommend a business with a poorly designed website or mobile app. I mean, that's pretty dramatic. That's more than half people that you potentially have as a target client or as a target visitor who, if they don't like your website, they're going to go tell all their friends. A little even more alarming is if it's not mobile friendly, 50% of customers will stop visiting it altogether. And I think that points to particularly the younger demographics where they really have very high expectations for what they can do with a mobile device. So digging a little deeper into that, we're seeing the mobile device take a new role, especially in Europe and even parts of Africa, where it is people's preferred device. And increasingly, people are very wary of common surfaces, things that may not be sanitized between users. So the ATM is a really good example of that. And as a result, increasingly, you're seeing banks offer ways to combine the mobile experience with ATMs and using the smartphone and its keypads as the interface. And again, we've seen some banks really transform that experience. It stops when you're trying to get cash. Obviously, if you're getting cash, you're going to have to touch the screen. But increasingly, for many of the other functions, you can accomplish a lot of this by allowing people to use their device. And so it really drives to this trend of people's expectation of being able to perform the same transaction, whether they're online, using a mobile device, visiting a branch, or even on the phone with a call center representative. And that's quite a daunting task for most companies to be able to realize that ubiquitous, consistent customer experience. And this kind of drives really to the need of personalization. And the challenge with personalization is that demographics really matter. And in this example, if we're comparing Gen Z to millennials, the way they make decisions and the way that they leverage various channels is dramatically different. What is common increasingly across all audiences is that they're really looking for financial institutions to almost become like a GPS system for directions. So they're really looking for an experience that helps, based on where they are in the journey, steer them in the right direction. We've seen two of the low-hanging fruits are loan shopping and qualified credit card signups. Two really good examples. For myself, for the better part of a decade, I've been using a travel-friendly card, which clearly has not been very useful in the last 12 months, which actually prompted me about 9 months ago to start looking at alternative credit cards that better fit my lifestyle today without being able to travel. What's important with this example is that banks and credit unions need to be able to take some of this information from past interactions and combine them with whatever the person is doing right at this point in time. And that's the holy grail of personalization, and really achieves the goal of delivering more convenience and offering something that feels quite tailored and on point. Another good example are Amazon and Netflix recommendation engines. They do a really good job at targeting the right offers at the right time. And this is really becoming the expectation even for financial services. So it tees up the need for more personalization, which has to go far, far deeper than just, small copy changes or maybe changing some colors or making a button bigger. It really requires you to look at the entire journey and the entire interaction that you're going to have with your customers. The other interesting thing about personalization is you need to start looking at also different ethnicities. And we've definitely seen some banks like Bank of America and Viva First, which is one of the first startups completely focused on the Latin American community, really taking to heart that different demographics and especially different ethnic groups, particularly immigrants and non-native English speakers in this case, require a different journey. And then also we'll look a little bit at that and some of the statistics. And then we'll also use an example of American Express's push into Japan. Univision and Harris did a study for Bank of America back in 2019. And what was interesting there, really painting the picture that different demographics have very different behaviors and expectation, was that 50% of the Hispanics polled had a checking or savings account versus 72% of non-Hispanics. So it has traditionally been an underserved demographic. And what's more important is that 84% of the Hispanic Americans say they'd like to learn more. So they are interested in taking better control of their financial future. And this is compared to 69% of non-Hispanics. And so if you look at it, that's 52 million people here in the US. And it explains why a Texas-based startup like Viva First would go full immersive into the Latino community. They officially launched or made the announcement in October. Their website still says it's under development. But if you go look at their social media presence, like Facebook, it is full immersive, from the use of picture, obviously the use of language, and really the messaging that they're catering to that Latino community. Another example is American Express. And, we saw them push pretty hard into Japan. The interesting thing, so this is an American company, obviously, trying to break into a very different market. Some of the key differences are, for instance, most credit card companies, them included, have a 5-step credit card sign-up process. In the US, the expectation that you can get through this process in about 30 seconds. In Japan, it's twice as long, so 60 seconds to make a decision. Cultural differences and the way that people approach the problem. What's also really interesting is that they've had to make a bunch of adjustments, such as making the form fields a lot larger. As you can see in the example here, they're using cyan as a background color. They've changed all the labeling and descriptions. And this page is very effective in Japan, I would argue that in other parts of the world, it wouldn't be so effective. It doesn't meet some of the aesthetics and the user experience that people are looking for, but again, very effective with the Japanese community. So let's define some key terms. There's a lot of technology out there that can help you test and experiment and try to find different customer experiences. If you look at traditional A/B testing or some of the newer experience optimization platforms, they're quite good for simple optimization across really the broadest portion of your audience. They're not designed and are not particularly good at going to single page or down to personalization for individuals. On the other hand, personalization engines address this particular requirement, so they're really good at going down to single users, even within a single channel like a mobile device, but they're really not so good when you want to look at a broader population, or if you want to start to look at a journey that crosses different channels, say mobile and desktop. And then you have real-time interaction management and multi-marketing hubs. They're really good for personalizing content, especially across channels, but they're not so good for finding an effective way to connect with people. So there's a lot of technology out there that's being used by many companies to try to address some of those challenges that we've talked about. But really the holy grail is to find a way to optimize for all users and personalize across all of the customer experience touch points. If you can do that, that really is the holy grail. So why is this so complicated? If you look at the problem today, we have all these silos, right? Whether it's web or mobile or using a kiosk or chatbots, so many different channels. And most companies are set up where different teams and different systems power these various channels. So it leads to a lot of disjointed systems. Often, if you're in a very large company, it can lead to disjointed teams and goals and focus. And it leads to very disparate workflows, which all translates to an inconsistent experience and really doesn't allow you to optimize across top-line metrics across all channels. Really, the way this is set up is for people to address specifically within their silo improvements. But if as a business you're looking as a top-line growth element to say to increase credit card sign-up, you want to do that across all the channels. And none of this setup really doesn't allow you to do that. So one of the key things is to start looking at AI. And what's really neat about AI is it can accelerate the experimentation and it can allow you to iterate very quickly. And what that allows you to do is to optimize the customer journey. And really the emphasis is on the journey. This is not about optimizing a single page or a single design element. It truly is looking at the whole journey. In my past example, if your company's goal is to increase credit card signups, you want to do that across all touch points and all elements of the journey. So hopefully you can achieve your target at a macro level. And you're never going to be able to get there by saying, hey, let's just focus on this one landing page and let's experiment on a few design elements or a few copy changes or a combination of those things. It's just not going to get you there. It's too incremental and it's too much at a micro level. And what we're really seeing is the power of AI is it allows you to move faster. You can become more nimble. You have the ability to react faster, and even you can start to anticipate changes. And the key is you don't have to wait for experiments to complete and do all this heavy analysis post-mortem, because that is part of the problem with the stack that we talked about earlier. Is most of it is really designed for you to let something run for a good period of time, stop it, analyze the results, and then hopefully find some conclusions and then implement it. The problem with that approach is the market moves so fast and customer expectations move so fast and dynamics move so fast that you can find yourself in a situation where the conclusions that you arrived at are no longer relevant. So even if you implement those changes, it's too late because the market's moved on. So this need to leverage real-time detailed insights and identify signals and respond faster is critical and something that AI can do a really good job at. It's actually a really good use case for applying AI. In October of 2020, The Economist put out a survey, and what was interesting is that only 15% of banks and insurance companies currently utilize AI, but almost 90% of them are looking to increase that over the next 5 years. When they were asked why they're looking to AI, they all stated pretty unanimously that it was for unlocking new growth and for shrinking costs. And half said that it would drive new products and open up new markets. And I think it goes to the points that I just made about this ability to experiment and to start to look at different angles, such as personalization and looking at different demographics and tapping into creating an experience that's going to resonate and be effective with those folks. So we at Evolve are obviously an AI company, and we really believe in that fundamental premise. And the reason why they're looking to AI is it can help solve key problems. It's what we call optimization at AI scale, or simply put, this is really the ideal use case for AI in the way that you can scale across a much broader domain. And the thing about AI is it has no feelings, it has no instincts, it has no bias, it has no agenda, which unfortunately we as people are guilty of many of those things. So it opens up a door for many, many more elements and variations. And in fact, this is a screenshot of Bank of America, and you can see that, you know, they're just on their homepage, and we're not talking about the whole journey, which has many pages behind that and many clicks and many different workflows. But if you look just at their homepage, you have 6 very discrete elements. And then really what you want to be able to do is create different variations. So you want to start to look at, well, what happens if I change the way I'm showing my call to action? Or what happens if I use different hero variations? And I'm not talking about 1 or 2. I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 different variations of it. And as you can see, the challenge that you quickly run into in this case is I have 6 changes that I can possibly make, and then I may have 2 to 5 or sometimes even more variations. So when you start to do the math and you start to combine all the possibilities, you can very quickly get into tens of thousands of possible options, which we as humans could never test. There's just not enough time, not enough bandwidth. But AI has an amazing and efficient way to be able to get through some of this and start to test a number of combinations that's just simply not possible without that kind of computing power. Getting back to personalized optimization, it needs to be something that you approach obviously carefully, methodically. But the nice thing is you don't have to get to it from day one. You can approach this with a crawl, walk, run approach. What's most important is to make sure that you have something that allows you to grow and allows you to get more sophisticated over time. And what we recommend is that you start with an AI-driven optimization. So find the baseline across the majority of your clients or visitors. Then second step is you can manually start to do some targeting. Most of you already have some tried and true understanding of key elements of your clients and how they make decisions. So you can load those into the system and start to go a little deeper past the majority and go after some of those subsegments of your customer base that you understand. And then the third step is you bring AI back into the picture and let it dig even deeper and further down into different client segments. One of the things that we always have to talk about is security and privacy and the impact that you have, which rightfully so. A lot of people always get concerned when you start to talk about analysis and personalization and making things contextual. Where do you draw that line in terms of protecting people's privacy and what kind of data are you using? And the good news is you can accomplish personalization without really tapping into any personally identified information or PII. And on this particular graphic, you can see that there's quite a bit of information that you can use that doesn't qualify as PII, such as like what time of day is it and what part of the world are they in and what page are they on. And you can really start to define a personalized experience. And then over time, as they make sense and as you get more comfortable with it, you can build on top of it and you can start to introduce more and more elements. And then even at some point do tap into PI, but you don't have to start there to offer something effective. One of the things to consider, because not all AI is equal and not all platforms are equal, make sure that whatever you use is going to give you a lot of control and allow you to retain your data. And in fact, there's some platforms out there and solutions that will turn your data into opaque values. So the platform provider or the SaaS provider actually never has access to any of the data. All they have is a bunch of obscure data, which without a key makes zero sense to anybody. And that can really protect the privacy of your customers and your visitors. And one of the things to consider is you're going to have to get through audits. And so it's really, really critical that you understand how this platform and this solution is going to help you pass audits. We ourselves deal with this quite frequently with our clients, and we can honestly say that we're able to help our clients get through audits on this portion of their infrastructure in 30 minutes to an hour. When you have the right platform and you have the right data models, it really is not a concern for the auditors. Digging a little bit more into personalized experiences and achieving personalization, again, it's something that you want to accomplish over time. And what we've been able to do with a lot of our clients is start and iterate on top of it. So we talk about continuous optimization. You can see that it's moving, it's going through lots of different iterations of, in this case, the homepage, but it's more than the homepage, it's the entire journey. But for this visual, we're showing, some pretty dramatic changes and different look and feel and different organization and different workflows on the homepage. And the idea is to get to sort of a baseline of the bulk of your customers and visitors are responding well to this idea. And then you start to take this best performing combination that you've identified and you start to make it more contextual. So as you move through this, in this case, that you can start to look at different locations and different demographics and present different data. And again, you can do this over time. And the more you push in this direction, the more success and the more personalization you're going to be able to execute. So with our example, you can see here that we have offered different treatments based on a simplistic idea of whether you're on the West Coast or East Coast or Central, and really seeing that there are some stark differences in terms of which treatment responds better to the needs of those different audiences. And that's the beauty of personalized optimization, because you can now really consider going down across a region or a state or a county or a city or even possibly down to a neighborhood and offer different experiences. The thing to remember here is sometimes it can be quite difficult to draw conclusions when you go further and further down into your user population. So even in some smaller cities, it may be very difficult. You may just not have enough data to figure out what's going to work. But what you can do is take a little step back and say, well, let's look at maybe 3 or 4 cities that are closely clustered together, and let's look at that traffic and start to consider what may be valuable or may be more effective across those folks, and then extend it to that particular city. So as a wrap up, you really need to think about the journey as an integrated and consistent experience across all your digital screens. And that includes your mobile device, it includes your ATM, it could include a kiosk if you have such capabilities. Mobile is clearly becoming the most critical device, but it needs to deliver the same experience. And unfortunately, particularly in financial services, you still see a lot of mobile devices and mobile apps that are quite crippled and don't offer nearly the same experience and same capabilities at great frustration to users. And, this is a race. This is a race for mindshare and experience. And unfortunately, a large portion of the population is quite fickle and is no longer sticky to your brand. So if they really feel that your mobile experience is subpar, there's a very high percentage that or a very high likelihood that they're going to move on and go to somebody that they perceive has a better solution. And this also really means looking at different segments and how that translates to different journeys. We talked about Gen X versus millennials and baby boomers. They have very different expectations and they have very different use cases for how they're going to use different devices. And you need to be able to have a sophisticated enough experience and experience management to allow you to take care of these different needs. And then as a final point, AI is really built for this. AI can be a little overhyped, and there's a lot of challenges out there with using different types of AI. But this particular use case is really in its wheelhouse. It opens up the door for really unparalleled scale and agility, and it really is something that we're seeing more and more financial services companies wanting to leverage and using quite effectively. And this is going to change the competitive landscape. So with that, I really would like to thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out to me. Would love to discuss further how a company like Evolve can help you with those challenges. And with that, thank you very much.